Good morning, everyone. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to write a long-form comparison article for SEO. Now, this is different from a comparison landing page, which you might be more familiar with. Here, we are pretty much concerned only with organic rankings, okay? So that's what we optimize for here. Now, in the last 4 years, I have analyzed thousands and written hundreds of software comparison articles. And the structure that I'm going to show you here is the best for maximizing ranking potential, branding power, and conversion rates. Okay. So we have 6 elements. We have the intro, we have the table, the mission, the comparison, the pro and con section, and the final verdict section. So I'm going to first show you how this looks like on one of our articles. Let's quickly scroll through this one. So here we have Hotjar versus Full Story. This particular article is optimized to rank for Hotjar versus Full Story, right? Session Stack is a startup. They don't have a ton of SEO, awareness that people would naturally search for Session Stack versus a competitor. So what we did here is we targeted Hotjar versus Full Story, and they show up on the second position right here. They've been holding this position for over half a year, I believe. And so here we have the intro. Here we have the comparison table. Here we have the mission section, or as I also like to call it, the what is section. And then here we have the comparison section. This is by far the longest part in the article. Very detailed, very thorough, have in-app screenshots and everything. Takeaway sections, we'll talk more about those. Then we have the pro and con section and the final verdict section. So I'm going to leave a couple of more examples in the video description just so that you can get a feeling for the comparison article. Okay, so let's start with the intro. This is by far the most important part of the comparison because everyone who lands on the article will judge it by the value, density, and thought process displayed in the intro, right? Like we all saw those articles where you land on and you get hit with just a bunch of statistics, just a bunch of stuff that you already know, like, hey, having, digital experience analytics platform or software installed on your website is very, very important because we always have to, watch what our visitors are doing on the website. Fluff like that where someone searching for, Hotjar versus Full Story already knows about. That's why they are buying a tool, right? So that's what we want to avoid. We really want to maximize value per word in this section. So the intro should give an immediate, full, and thoughtful answer. And I like to structure the intros like this. I usually have a statement saying that, hey, I have tested the tools and hands-on, which is very, very important. We'll talk more about this later. And then here we have, Hotjar, great platform for high traffic websites, Full Story, excels in customer journey analysis. We have clearly positioned these two tools in a very unique or distinct way. Okay. Now, in these paragraphs, we could state the ideal use case of each tool. We could talk about their positioning and messaging, and we can talk about who is the target audience. Okay. We can do multiple or we can do just one, depending on whatever the situation is essentially. If we're writing a three-way comparison, such as Hotjar versus Full Story right here, then we should also add another paragraph in the intro, essentially explaining that why we have added our tool in the comparison. So here we do that by simply saying, however, neither of the two tools are a good choice for, and then we state our ideal customer profile essentially, right? And then explain that that's why we have added our tool in the comparison, and we talk about, the features, the use cases, and so on. Now you can see that this intro is very, very value dense. So everyone who is kind of happy with the raw statements that we made here will convert at this point. That might mean that they're happy with the research and they want to take the research, in their own hands by signing up for the tools, scheduling demo calls, whatever is the case. If they're that type of personality, that type of warrior personality, really, right, then they will kind of convert at this point. Everyone else will be kind of interested in where did we get these conclusions, right? Now, about these conclusions, we actually make these ourselves. We don't just open the website, check the copy of the tools that we're comparing, and then just kind of like take the claims that they're making on their website. Because honestly, everyone says that their tool is the best on their website. It's very vague, doesn't really help anyone. So yeah, what we should do is we should sign up for the tools, test the tools hands-on, and draw our own conclusions, and then present those conclusions in the comparison, right? Now, in situations where you can't sign up or buy the license for the tool that you're testing, then I highly suggest that you use their help desk, which for most companies is very thorough, and YouTube tutorials. So the next section of the comparison article is the summary table. So before we reveal all the details behind the claims that we have made in the intro, we should show just a couple, because at this point we still haven't established the context of the tools, and showing all the details at this point would be just too overwhelming and confusing. So we kind of unravel that slowly. Now, I like to include a table in the, for this specific case because it's quite clear. And I like to have something like a 5-star rating system. You can have whatever rating system that you want as long as it's clear and identifiable, I suppose. Now, so for us, we assign 5 stars where if the particular feature or soft quality of the tool, we'll talk more about this later, is really, really great. Like you can't really find anything better out there. 4 stars means that the feature is like good, but has improvements. It's not super remarkable. 3 stars means that, yeah, the feature, definitely is still under development. 2 stars means that, yeah, this is a pretty bad feature. You can't really achieve what you want to achieve with a particular feature. And 1 star means that, hey, they have the feature, but it's pretty useless. Like it's probably better if they just didn't have it, right? So that's the star rating system. Now, what we describe in the cells right here has to be it's a kind of like a very concise summary of the particular feature, and it has to be written in a very detailed way. In fact, in a way that if we switch the 2 paragraphs around, they wouldn't be true anymore, right? So, for example, like this is an example of what you don't do, okay? Let's say that we have the integration sections, and one of the description would be, hey, we have lots of integrations with productivity and project management tools, and the other one has everything you need to integrate in your tech stack. Now, you can imagine that if you switch these 2 paragraphs around, like you could not recognize the particular tool that they're describing. They're not unique. It's very vague. Could be true for any of the tool actually, right? So we have to have something like this, but it's like very clearly talking about, in this case, Toggle, and in this case, Qualkify. So that's how you see if what you have written here is of good quality. At the bottom of the table, we simply restate who the ideal user is of each tool, very similar to what we have done in the intro. And then we have the first set of call to action, essentially. So anyone who doesn't sign up at this point will want to learn more about the companies. So we will establish that context next. We have the mission section here, that's how I like to call it, or also the what is section. And this section is split into 2 parts. It's kind of made for emotional readers, really. So the first part, we have a statement over here that kind of describes their positioning and messaging. And we also have the screenshot of the homepage. And this is really to evoke a feeling, to kind of just see the vibe behind the brand. And really it's designed for, emotional readers. Now, the second part of this section, we simply explain the history and the reason why the software was made, like here, the unique features of the particular software, and either the ideal use case or the future goals that this particular company has for their tool. If we are in a market where the tools are changing very fast, and that's what our users expect, then, for example, AI tools, right? Then future goals would be an important section, more so than the ideal use case in this current moment. So everyone who's still reading, now we have established the context to show the details, right? So we dive into that next. So the comparison section, this is the meatiest part of the article, and it almost like it has its own outline. Okay. And the outline, we essentially talk about the features. So I like to think of the features that we're describing as the core use case, the soft qualities, or the auxiliary features. But the core use case, we will always have this one. So if we're comparing, for example, time tracking, software, then of course one of the features we will talk about is the time tracking features. Absolutely, right? And this can be a very, very long feature, um, kind of like subpart. Okay. And then we also have soft qualities, like we can talk about, the UI, how hard was the setup, the learning curve, the pricing, customer support, which includes, having help desk and so on. So if the tool is particularly complex, this is probably quite important. And then we also have auxiliary features. So these are features that some tools might have, some might not. The analytics, reporting, integrations capabilities, collaboration capabilities with my team, for example, right? And also the underlying technology. If there's a special way how the tool was made in terms of the underlying technology, that's also something that would be, useful for the reader. Now, if you are comparing tools where the use cases are just kind of very straightforward, perhaps like time tracking, right? Or maybe social media scheduling, then the likely differentiators or the reasons why people might pick a particular tool over the other would be in terms of like soft quality and auxiliary features, right? So for example, if you are selling VoIP software or email marketing software, well, all the features of these tools, they're very, very, very similar. So the core use cases, right? So people would usually make decisions which tool to go with in terms of their soft qualities and auxiliary features potentially. Okay. But if the tool that you're comparing is particularly complex, such as let's say SEO software, which has keyword research tool, rank tracking tool, website analytics tool, very very lots of stuff, lots of core use cases, then the focus will really be more on these, okay, and not so much on soft qualities and auxiliary features. So that's how we structure the outline. Make sure that you keep the features at the top that your market will most care about, and that really depends on the market, on the for right. So for our audience that's reading the comparison. So then the comparison section has a couple of important elements. The first one is how to write the headers and the subheaders. And this is like a huge missed opportunity whenever I see something like this being written in the comparisons. Right. And this is the usual way how companies usually go about it, right? But the thing is, like, we are writing the comparison. We always have to think about, hey, we are writing for logical readers, for emotional readers, and for skim readers. So people who want a very fast answer. And this really doesn't doesn't really serve anyone. So I would suggest that you don't do this. I would suggest that you do something like this. This is what we typically do. So we have first, this is the SEO title, in this case, the name of the feature or use case or whatever. And we have the core title repeated, just so because we want to tell Google, hey, this is what our article is about, right? And this is really just for SEO or perhaps even navigation. Then we have the second element over here, which is the takeaway header, which explains the main difference in a nutshell, right? The main difference for how these three tools differ in customer journey analysis in a very quick statement like this. Then we have a table here that kind of restates the stars that we have assigned for this particular feature. And the goal here is to kind of remind people, the readers, like, how the tools kind of compare, and also to visually break the section. That's also very important. And then we have the helpful feature explanation. Now, this is very important for complex tools where we have so many features that perhaps even someone who was already experienced with using perhaps one of the tools could be like a bit confused about all the features, right? So that's why we include that right here. And then finally, we have the takeaway subheader, which is just a informative subheader that clearly states which tool is in the focus, right? So instead of saying, hey, we're not talking about Hotjar funnels, we say, hey, Hotjar's funnels, and here's essentially the conclusion, right? Way more informative, and someone who is just skim reading will appreciate this a lot. And then if someone is keen reading and they decide that this is interesting, they want to dive deeper, they can do so very easily. Next, we have to talk about how to actually write like product comparison copy, because it's very different from just writing, the typical blog posts. Now, blog posts, the focus there is on education, right? Like on the concepts. But here we're focused on the tools, describing the tools, explaining how they're different, so that's what's in the focus. So we can write about how the feature works, right? Like what we have done here. What's good or bad about the way the feature was designed, right? We can talk about the benefits and drawbacks of that design. We can talk about our experience using the features and the quality of the results that we got using the feature. Then we can talk about for whom, when, and where do we think that this particular feature design would be most useful. And finally, we can talk about how the particular feature is different from other tools in the comparison. There we go. So we don't actually have to write all these things in one section. That could also might be cramming a bit. Doesn't always make sense to do so. But if we always miss or leave out one of these elements, then the comparison will kind of ring hollow or be disjointed, essentially, right? It will feel like it doesn't have everything needed that a comparison should have. So we always think in these terms. If we sometimes don't know what to write, we basically refer back to this. Another very important point, part of the comparison, are annotated screenshots and GIFs. Because at the end of the day, people are reading a comparison because they don't want to go through the process of signing up for the tools or scheduling demo calls, learning how to use them, and then drawing their own conclusions. They kind of want that knowledge served to them like very easily, right? Effortlessly. So a vital part of that process is visualizing themselves using the tools, right? Which means seeing the features. So to draw attention to the particular feature that I'm describing, I like to use Annotely. It's a free browser app for annotating screenshots. It's really, really awesome, really easy to use. And it has everything that you need. So we have the number pins, we have the arrows, we have text, we have rectangle boxes, we have highlights, we even have blur, just like that. I suggest that you have one screenshot every 1 to 3 paragraphs, which might seem a lot, but actually when you're describing the tools, you will see that, yeah, of course, like the best way to explain something is just to show it. So it comes very naturally. So for example, here we have, a screenshot from an article. Canly has a completely decentralized system. Then we have 1 and 2, because we'll be talking about these two sections in the next paragraph. And then we see, hey, you can create new events in the dashboard. That's like here, and notification, everything that's like in the up here, point 1. Then the final element of the comparison are the winner callouts. Just at the end of each, sub comparison that we create. So that would mean, I don't know, like we're comparing, let's go all the way up. We're comparing time tracking or perhaps UI or collaborations options. Then at the bottom of that section, we essentially write who we believe is the winner in that particular comparison. So sometimes for more complex tools or if the tools kind of like differ a bit, or I should say more than average, then you can have multiple winners, right? Tool number A, tool A might be the best in situation A, and tool B might be the best in situation B. That's fine. You just write it how it is. After that, we have 2 more sections, which are very, very short. So first one is the pro and cons section, where we simply state the things that we were impressed by and the things that bothered us throughout the comparison, right? Just like that. Now, this section is quite important for SEO. It follows Google's product review guidelines, so that's why we have included it in here. And also, it's a nice recap of everything that we have talked about in the comparison. And then we have the final verdict section, where we simply and finally state who each tool is best suited for. Once again, here we have done this with a nice table. Sometimes we also do it with like bullet points, or even both. So, and although this section is short, right, it really requires lots of thinking, because now we are using our overall product experience and design intuition to make a declarative statement how the reader should spend their money. And that's something that we shouldn't take politely. So that's it. That's how I write a software comparison article. As you can see, we have followed all the Google product reviews best guidelines, which basically state, hey, we are going to promote the article that clearly shows that the author has had practical hands-on experience with the tools and they have given their expert opinion on the tools, right? And we have also written the comparison to serve all types of readers, logical readers, emotional readers, skim readers, essentially everyone. So our comparison will rank higher. It will have a stronger branding potential and convert better than anything else that's on the SERP. Okay, so now where to go from here? Well, my agency specializes in creating comparative content like this. To learn how we can help, book a call with me with a link that should be in the video description. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching and stay blessed.